They like to help buy. It's not from a condo. Take a bracket.
All right, shall we get started? I think a few more people are trickling in the room. Full disclosure, I did not prep our panelists at all for today because I know that they have so much to share that they didn't need pre-questions. Am I right?
Of course, we're ready to go.
Yes, so,
As long as you start on that end.
I'll start over here. So first, I think just to break the ice and let us get going was this your first year? How many times have you attended? If not, and what made you decide to go? We'll start with Shanice. Those 3 questions, all in one.
My first year, I decided to go because I've been to a real estate conference before, and I thought it would be just a good experience, and be able to move the needle forward in my business.
I love that.
This was not my first time. This was my second time attending. And the reason why I decided to go is because I do think that it doesn't matter how many times you go, as long as you are around like-minded people, you're going to be able to get some nuggets and information that can help you and your business move forward.
Matt.
This time, all leadership is required to go. And I go largely for 2 reasons. One, the conversations outside of the room. And then number 2 is to get ideas for small group discussions and things like that.
Sure. So I know, Shanice, you have some notes with you. I think from here, it would be helpful if we just start sharing some of our takeaways. Whether it was big or small, but why it was important for you that we were in the room when you heard whatever tidbit it was.
So one of my biggest takeaways was, that sometimes we are doing the right things. We just need confirmation that we're doing the right things. So just being consistent with whatever you're doing was my biggest takeaway. And also connecting with agents outside of, like Matt said, the room, at the hotel, at the pool, being able to have those conversations with people that you wouldn't be able to connect with.
Did any of those conversations give you more business strategies outside of Mega Camp, or was it more about building those relationships?
Some strategies, one person in particular, we talked about buyers, and she actually role played, at the pool, with me, and that was nice.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Did a full role playing session and everything while your son. That's when you know KW is a goer.
That's balance.
That is it. As far as the biggest takeaway, and I know we've had a lot of conversations when we were all together. More than anything, and it was said over and over and over again, and literally Brittany's wearing the shirt, it's just do the work. We know what we need to do, we know what we're good at, and instead of trying to get random objects, like, just really hone in and do the work. And then the other one was, and I really took a quote from Gary Keller, he was saying the only way you stay ahead of change is if you stay in relationship with your contacts. And I know I'm really big on relationships, so he was, really saying, don't worry about what's happening, don't worry about the knowledge. The only way that you can get ahead of change is if you actually stay in relationship. And so that was one of my biggest, because that's what it's about, right? We're in the business to be in relationship with people. So that to me was like the overarching.
All right, so if you're ever gonna go, spend the extra $300 to go to CEO Summit.
Fair. That was good. Agreed.
So Gary started it off by saying that you can move the ball a lot faster by passing than dribbling. And we're in an industry where we have a lot of people who claim to be in business, but don't know how to pass the ball. And so CEO Summit is speakers who have generally nothing or very little to do with real estate. You can tell they're kind of coached and prepped as to what's going on in our industry, but they're people who consult across all industries. And so, the first speaker was pretty hard to follow. He talked about all the different generations and how they think, what their perspective is, what makes them tick, what their strengths are on a team. And I probably have more notes on that and, more ahas around the misconceptions that I have in how to communicate with different people on my team based on the generation rate.
Yeah, I think, just to play off of that, the speaker that Matt's referring to is Jason Dorsey. And it gave a lot of perspective for not only when you're working with clients in real estate, he said that we probably work across the most generations in our industry. So understanding the generation that you're working with, the generations that you're working with will help you speak to them in a way that makes sense. And then from a leadership perspective, it's how to work with my various leadership team members. Because we have several generations in our leadership team, which I think is what Matt was referring to. Lissette, I know you also went to CEO Summit and I got to sit next to her. And so her and I, like the whole time we invited me, like, damn.
That was good. That was, no, there's a lot of things. Let me switch out of my mega camp and go into my CEO Summit notes. So, no, I agree. One of the things that I loved, it said in any 10-year period, you will experience 2 of your best years and 2 of your worst years. And then the 6 years are everything in between. That really kind of like hit a chord with me, because when you think that you're in a situation or you're trying to figure out what's going on, you have to look at it from like, not so in it, but rather take yourself out and remember that in any decade, you're gonna have 2 of the best years you've ever had, 2 of the worst years you ever had, and then 6 years in between. So just give yourself some grace and keep trudging along. So that was one of my biggest takeaways, that in a decade, you can have that. So, you want me to keep going? I got notes for days. Okay, so then, let me see what else I have here. Oh, when we're talking about generations, one of the questions that was posed was, what is the number one, like, determinant that shapes a generation? Does anyone want to kind of guess before I give the answer?
Was that never so wrong?
We were beyond, no, we were.
We were
We were wrong.
That's also.
Does anyone want to guess?
Any guess?
Well,
My guess would be technology, but I'm gonna assume that's probably close to what.
Shannon got it.
Shannon got it, you got number 2, Julie. So the number one
Some smart
determinant
people
is parenting, and then number 2 is technology. And so when you really want to get an idea, again, of how to speak to individuals, not only is it understanding like the generation, but then also understanding like the parents and like what's important to them, because depending on the kind of parenting and what's important for the parent will dictate then how they actually parent their child and what's important to that generation. So for example, our Gen Zers, they're going all the way back to kind of the ideas of baby boomers, where what's most important to them is stability. It's, kind of staying in a certain place for a certain amount of time. Like they're going backwards. They're actually getting married at a younger age again because the parents prior got away from it due to what their parents were before. So everything in life is cyclical, if nothing else. So that was another thing that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Matt, you look eager.
She's doing great. I mean, I've got lots of notes around that. That was the most fascinating conversation. And he had data behind everything he was talking about.
Yeah.
Regardless of the generation, he talked about the fact that AI decreases trust. So if you're using that as a tool, be cognizant about the fact that, we're in a trust-based business and you've got to make that yours, and not have that replace you. Couple other words he said, test negatively, and we are the worst at using them. The biggest being referral.
Yeah.
So if you want to repel people and repel referrals, ask for referrals. So it is.
What do you ask instead?
Do you have any friends I can help?
Specifically, the word referral is what we're not supposed to do.
Correct.
Exactly.
And that was kind of a theme throughout the whole thing, that both with that speaker and others. There's 2 million of us, or 1.5 million agents in the country. There's 2,300 locally. And we're all using the same language and the same noise, and it makes us all look homogenous and to average consumers annoying. So there were a lot of presenters and speakers were talking about how they just rename certain things. There was somebody who builds their business purely on open houses. They do 50 open houses a year. Each one of them has an ice cream truck in the driveway, so they don't call them open houses. They call them neighborhood ice cream socials. And there's literally two lines. There's a line of people who are there to look at the house, and there's a line of people who are there just for the ice cream. And they both get treated equally well.
So piggybacking, going along with him and continuing about other things that we've learned. The other concept that I walked away with is when you're having conversations, it's also the idea of telling story and making sure that we're storytellers. So first you have to find the story of what it is, whether it's the story behind the house or the story about yourself, whatever you're looking at, you have to find the story, then you have to craft it accordingly and then tell the story. And coming from a place of more storytelling than again, just speaking from a place of just business, if that makes sense. So that was another like takeaway, but that was from CEO Summit. That I did spend extra money on and went to. I have a lot of notes on CEO Summit. I've got notes on Mega Camp too. I can talk about it, but that CEO Summit is worth it.
Anything that you're implementing because of CEO Summit or Mega Camp? And this would be for all three of you, for all the notes and outlaws that we can share today, but is there something that you were like, the thing that I'm gonna do differently is this?
Well, one of the big, so we'll go CEO Summit first and then from there. Because another thing that we talked about in the CEO Summit, again, going along with the idea of how you're speaking, telling the story, the verbiage that we're using and you know, really being in relationship. The other takeaway was that you should be working with people that create your super fans, like create clients. So if you're not able to, when you're working with someone, they should be the ones raving about the work that you've done, the help that you're doing. So you should be looking to really create clients, providing the opportunity to bring on more clients as opposed to you yourself. So I thought that was really interesting, the idea of creating super fans. And the way, one of the examples that they used was how Chewy does things, Chewy.com. And the manner of that, and I'm just going off the cuff now, the way that Chewy does things, the woman was talking about how she had gotten a rescue and she was trying to find a particular brand of food or whatever. And so she had put it in order, but the manner in which they continued to respond back to her quickly, and then they were also doing those extra personal touches that before she even ever got the actual food, they had already created a super fan, because she was talking about how sweet it was that they went the extra mile, the fact that they had actually said something, and then moving forward, the fact that every birthday they received something for the dog, and they received this little like animated photo from it. And it doesn't matter that that's being replicated over and over again, so it's okay to create a system around it and replicate. It's the fact that that personal touch then creates other people to become your champions. And so I thought that was really like, hello, duh. Like, it's all about relationship. And if you start to create a system behind nice key touch points that just go the extra mile, that's gonna be where individuals are gonna just feel better. And then they're gonna be the ones to speak on your behalf. You don't have to go out looking for the business. Your clients are gonna create the business for you.
One thing that I love that she said, that's amazing, but a lot of those extra touches didn't cost any extra money. It was simply just the email back with the question that dug a little deeper, or the phrase that just made that person feel like they weren't just another order. They weren't just another client. And I think that was one of her biggest things, that marketing and building relationships doesn't always have to be an act that includes a financial spend, like sending flowers or buying gifts, although that can be part of it. It doesn't have to be all of it. And a lot of times just asking someone, how are they doing, genuinely can go a really long way. Yeah.
So piggybacking off of what she said, they said to call them client influencers. So you'll reach out to your clients and ask them if they can take a video or a photo of their favorite part of their house and then post it on their story or on their Facebook feed and then tag you. And then everybody that comments or likes it, then you engage with them. So create your own client influencers.
Oh, I love that.
Well, I like that.
You were there.
I know.
And
I'm like, yeah, that's great.
It's all good things, all good things.
So Phil Jones talks again about that if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're probably nothing to everybody. And so you need to be able to demonstrate that you truly know the people that you're trying to help. And the best way to do that is to take the time to create a list of your 3 ideal customers and what their top 3 problems are, and then all of your narratives are driving at those specific things. And he addresses the concern, well, I don't turn away people because they're not, in my perfect little niche. And yet, you'll still capture them. I mean, they're still gonna come to you, and you can still serve them. And yet, if you don't speak specifically to your niche, you're probably gonna inadvertently lose a lot of the people you truly wanna be in business with. He says your value is only valuable when the people appreciate your value and it's appreciated. So don't justify it. And then the big one was, don't create a giant list of all the things you do to get your fee. So don't justify your fee by saying, I do 180 things. By the way, this is the narrative every buyer's agent is putting online right now. And they're all like trying to justify it by the 180 things. And so when you send that list to people and they go, well, I only want these 30 things, so how much you can charge me?
Yeah.
Right? So if you're not speaking to what they actually want and value, they don't care how many things are on the list. So really narrow that down to the stuff that's important that differentiates you.
Okay.
So we go again?
Oh, sorry, I apologize. I thought you looked like you were ready to add.
I mean, I could, but no. He hit the nail on the head on that one. That's exactly it.
Something that I thought was cool was that, there was a panel with, Gary Keller. I can't remember the guy's name, but, they said that you have to have information that no one else has. And you need to ask your buyer, is there anything that you've ever seen, driven by, or been in that if it was for sale, that you wanted? You need to give, or the buyer needs to give you their MLS. So instead of just using the MLS as a tool that every real estate agent has, we need to get our buyers to give us what they want and to find it. So I thought that was good.
I love too, he actually said, he thinks about his past clients. So like if the buyer's like, yeah, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in CV school district, and I love Cape Cods, and ideally you would have a pool. He starts going back through his past clients, and he's like, who have I sold a Cape Cod to with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a pool in the last 10 years, because they might be ready to move. And when he called them, he would tell them, hey, I have this buyer looking for a house just like yours. And he said, it's almost like one of the biggest compliments you can give someone is that their house is desirable. But that was like, gave me chills, like, okay, so who can we go back to that maybe they're not quite ready, but because you have a buyer at hand, might open the door to a whole new conversation.
And then all you have to do from that piggybacking is then have the conversation on what it is that creating their MLS, what it is that they would want, and continuing that same cycle, finding something for them, that seller, and finding what they need. So he just continues to cycle around his own. He really is like the mayor of his area, and he knows based off of who he's worked with, how to go about comparing individuals to other individuals and keep it going on that cycle. And he wakes up thinking about, hey, that house that such and such was having a conversation, I just thought about who it is, and he'll call the person. He only comes up with a list of the people that he wants to call that day, specifically based off of the needs of the other individuals he had talked to. And he's very strategic on that.
And it ties back to Ben Espenshade had a post recently. And he said, make sure that your buyers and your sellers know that you're lead generating every day for 2 to 3 hours a day, looking for houses for your buyers and buyers for your sellers. That's more valuable than that list people are posting on social media that Matt's referring to. And that's exactly what this tactic is. is just, I'm gonna find that house. You're gonna get sent homes from the MLS, but also know that I'm actively searching what's not on the MLS for you. So I thought that was a great like timing for when Ben posted that. I was like, that's literally what this guy is doing. He's just being creative with how he lead generates, and it's a much warmer call because he's calling with a purpose. Yeah, I love that. He was probably one of my favorite panelists.
I agree.
That and the open house guy.
Yeah, no, he was so warm and inviting. You can't, I mean, if I was the person on the other line, I probably would have sold too, because he's just like, he's so sweet.
Yeah, he was the grandpa that gave the Werther's originals.
Like,
I was him.
that was him. But he was also very strategic, and even though, so it also shows, so it goes back to the beginning of the conversation, which I love, that while he was very strategic, he was still in relationship. And so he's making calls based upon strategy, but being within relationship with his past consumers and being very like clear on what the message is. Cause he also said he's an introvert at heart, and he goes straight to the jugular. Like, he's like, I'm not here to mess around. Like, so when people answer his calls, they're like, what are you looking for? But he says it in a loving way. Like, look, there's someone out here that's looking for this. They want your house kind of attitude. But he does it from a place of relationship, which again ties back to everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, he had to do the work to be able to get
To get to that point. Yeah.
Matt?
No, she's really quiet. Getting out of it.
And she's still got a bunch of papers
Yeah.
there, so.
Yeah, let's go through it.
Okay.
You definitely have some.
So something, that I'm implementing is, whatever, this, I think there was Rory, was it Beta?
Yes.
Pick a level of consistency and stick with it. So you can wanna do all these things and it all sounds really good, but just pick something that you can be consistent with and just do that. And that was really my biggest takeaway. I was talking to Brittany while I was there and I was like, there's all these things, all these people going up and I do a lot of these things. Like, I don't know what my one thing is. And she's like, well, maybe it's consistency. And that's what it was. Because we're trying to do all of these things and be everything to everybody. And then you're not consistent.
Yeah, I think you even mentioned like, when we were talking about the open house guy that does the ice cream, makes some ice cream socials instead of open houses. I remember Shanice being like, I've got a whole system for this.
Just do it.
I just need to implement.
Yeah. So, the shiny object syndrome. Jeremy from that.
Yeah, I think in relation to that, what the theme was is find the thing you love to do. So if it's the ice cream socials for the whole neighborhood and you love to do that, how can you 10x it and do it really freaking well a lot over and over and over again to get business? Like the people that didn't like to cold call, they didn't cold call. Right. If they didn't like calling expires, they didn't call expires. They found the thing that gave them joy and made doing business fun, and then just took it to like a whole nother level and did it consistently. So what can you do that you love to do, 10x it and do it repeatedly over and over again?
I love the one who did, she liked to participate in community events. So she didn't actually organize the event. She didn't even sponsor the event. If she knew that the only way the food truck was gonna come is if they had like 200 tickets pre-sold, she just would tell the organizer, just go ahead and book the food truck. And if you're short, I'll make up the difference. And so she got on all the marketing, and 90% of the time, she never had to make up the difference.
I think she mentioned like one time she had to, and it was like $50. Yeah, it was something like,
Yeah, it was
minuscule compared to what some of our events cost.
Right, so just asking organizers of different community events, like, what's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest fear around this event? And how can I fill that gap? And it's way different than just striking a check.
Right.
And not trying to take over the event, just helping.
Which leads me to another thing that was also talked about that I love, which is the idea of coming from a place of service. And so when you lead and you come from a place of service, it really puts you in a position to gain relationships, be with others, and then they'll continue to bring you back. So that lady who just was there and she came from a place of service, then in that community, they continue to have her be a part of it. They continue, and she's become, I think they said that she represented like 60 to 65% of that entire community because she gained their trust by coming from a place of service. And then that goes into the branding conversation, because I know I'm guilty of that, where they were talking about personal branding and the importance of it, but I don't want it to be about me, like look at me kind of thing. So that's where I get freaked out. But they explain the importance is if you come from a place of service and you're also coming from a place of like giving back or giving, whether it's information, knowledge, whatever it is, that it's not a matter of a you thing, but rather I'm here to serve you. I'm here to give. And I think that's the kicker.
When you're serving, there's always wins.
There's, exactly.
I love that. No, she got.
I can give another one. I don't think you haven't talked about this one yet. Let's do it together.
I love that. She's like, come with me.
So with the life is a long journey broken up into sprints. Okay, and I'm laying it up here, so I'm gonna say. Here's the layup. So life is a journey broken up into sprints, and then the first.
She passes the ball.
I did. I passed. This is me passing. I'm serving here.
So it was Gary Keller, talking about the morning.
Yep.
So basically this stuck with me. He's like, you don't have to do everything all day if you just do the most important things in the morning. And he said the first 5 to 6 hours of the morning is your morning. So whether it's 5 a.m., 12 p.m., it doesn't matter. It's just the first 5 to 6 hours, which was like, I love that because I can't wake up at 5 a.m. I'm just not my best self at 5 a.m.
Took the pressure off.
So he said, when you win the morning consistently, you win the play.
So that was a big one. And going along with that, it is like, as long as you're focused in the first 5 to 6 hours, then you gain back and you earn the right to live the life that you want to live and do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you stay focused on those first 5 to 6 hours and getting everything accomplished that needs to happen. So plug in, stay focused, do what's necessary at the very beginning so that you earn the right to live the life that you want to live. And then also knowing that that idea of this life is a journey filled with sprints. It goes not only just for your day broken up into sprints, but the same thing when you're looking at your year, when you've got to break it up into sprints, a journey that's within sprints, as opposed to just a destination and this is it. Like it's broken up into sprints, and that stayed with me. That instead of being overwhelmed by all the things, that I can break it up into sprints of what needs to occur at different points. Whether it's that day, that week, that month, that year, move forward. It's all sprints.
I love that.
Yeah, that was another one.
I love that CEO summit. Just kind of circling around that. Gary Keller is really good at making sure that these events are speaking to as a whole. So the whole first part of CEO summit was talking about stress. Like we're entering into this new market and it feels stressful because it is. And change is stressful, even if we're excited, it's still a form of stress. And he talked about how stress actually helps us become tough. And that the tough are going to be the ones that survive this market. And he gave different strategies around how to balance between stress and recovery. And that importance of you do need stress in your life so you can get agility both mentally and physically, but then what can you be doing to help that recovery period? So like for mental recovery, it could be reading, practicing music or art. That was stress strengthening, I apologize. Recovery was like sleep, meditation, yoga, adopting a pet for emotional, how can you nurture relationships, accepting love was a way to recover. He talked about journaling, the importance of going to counseling. A lot of people do need that kind of stuff, but they don't want to admit it, or they think it makes them weaker, but actually that balance of recovery makes you stronger and more resilient to stress. But that was one of, just speaking of that morning routine, just also made me think about that in the beginning of CEO Summit of stress is a form of physical training for your mind. So the more stress you experience, the tougher you're getting, so congratulations. But just make sure you're finding periods of recovery throughout your week. Make sure that you can bounce back from it versus react to it when it happens.
I really like when he was talking about mental toughness, he just looked at the room and he's like, you know, how many of you remember your first deal? The first deal that fell apart, and like, how many hours you cried in a dark closet by yourself, like, and wanted to quit the industry, and right, like, it's devastating. Your ego's like just destroyed, you're paranoid about money, like all the things, and then, you know, when you're doing multiple deals a month, you can have 3 of those in any given month, and you become not immune to it, like it still impacts you, but you just, the strength that you have to get through it gets way easier, and we think about that in terms of our physical health, but not necessarily our mental health.
Yeah, he said, tough times don't last, tough people do. Tough people don't just go through it, they thrive. And then one other one-liner, he said, perseverance and passion over a long-term goal is grit.
I'm sorry, Brittany, could you do that one more time?
You got it. He said, tough, oh, wait, hold on, here we go. Perseverance and passion over a long-term goal is grit. And another thing that I like that he said we tend to try to just remove stress, or we retreat from stress, instead of just trying to work through it. And I reflected on that because I've definitely been that person before where I'm like, well, I'm just gonna get rid of this.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to deal with it. And like, this life doesn't work that way. So you just have to persevere and push through and accept like, okay, this is how it is. So what's next?
So you're telling me that I gotta keep the latest pet rabbit?
Yeah.
That is the same way. That is
Man, that hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta keep your head around it. One day she's gonna start middle school and you just gotta do it. You gotta put them on the bus and be like. That was today.
I was gonna add to the stress conversation, cause there was a conversation about like haphazard toughness is like what happens to you. And one of the things that Gary Keller talked about within all of that is that stress you create happens for you, not to you. So if you take the same mindset that you take with the physical, where when you're trying to build muscle, right, you go in and you're lifting, you're doing all the things, and then you allow yourself through recovery, that if you do that on all 7 facets of your life, like all 7 areas, and you get into the habit of creating the stress, right, and then going through the stress, and then recovery, and going through the stress, and then recovering, that it's a different type of stress. And when you're creating it, it's not happening to you, but rather for you, to create what Matt's talking about, that toughness. And so now you're able and prepared to go through different hard times because you've done the work on the front end and you've prepared yourself for what we're going through. You've prepared yourself for whatever it is that comes, regardless of whatever, whether it's financial or physical or emotional or within business. You're putting yourself through positions of quote unquote stress so that you learn how to go through stress and then recover, go through stress and then recover, so that nothing happens to you, but rather for you.
Anybody else? What didn't we talk about that you wanted to make sure we talked about today?
So, they said, or one of the MAPS coaches said that no one's gonna call you and tell you that it's time to go pro. You have to level up on your own. So you have to look at where you're at and make the decision if you need, someone to help you get through that, which would be a coach. And that was powerful because I struggled with teetering between, should I get a coach, should I not, it's expensive. But we need somebody to help us get to the next level. And you have to recognize that on your own.
I love that. But I think right after that, 2 of you signed up for a coach, right?
One got the well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, they
But
coach.
same concept.
Yeah, a coach.
So mine's not about that, but one of the things that I, really, maybe this is like the little nerd inside of me, but Julie can appreciate this. One of the things that they also said is if you don't measure it, you can't move it. So that really, really stuck with me because we should be also like putting ourselves in position to measure every activity we do. Not only should you not take the shiny object and you should actually just focus on one thing and be consistent with it, you should also start measuring and like really looking at what's happening so that you're able to move it, whatever it is, or you're able to pivot. But if you can't measure it, then you can't move it. And the other small little nugget that I just wrote down that I thought was like brilliant, but then also very simple, is that mastery is in the mundane. So, and that's what it is. It's in those mundane tasks, those mundane activities that you gotta get masteries in the mundane. And I wrote it down, not that we don't know it, but it's like just another reminder that that's just what it is. And I'm gonna end with, for sure, like, do the work and measure it and make sure that that's what mastery is in. So, and more than anything, it was, for me, I can only say mega camp wasn't necessarily a lot of ahas, but more validation. That we already know the information. We have great supports here at the brokerage that we're at. We're already talking about doing the right things. It's more validation that we know that, and now we just have to come back and actually like implement, be consistent, and be true to it. We're not new to this, we're true to this.
Yeah, that hit it.
If you know, you know. I mean, not like-
I'm not mad at that at all. All right, so if you want the truth from your customers, get someone else to ask what actually happened. We all,
I was kind of like, who do I want?
well, if you don't want to know, don't get somebody else to ask. So then what can you do in any moment, to elevate that moment into a memorable experience? So not every communication has to be boring, not every part of the process has to be. Ooh, if it has your logo on it, it's not a gift, it's an advertisement.
Yes.
Is that for taxes or?
Hey, you do what you. That's between you and your accountant. And then everything we do communicates either how different or how similar you are to everyone else. Small group.
Oh, yeah, she needs to keep some.
Before we open it up for questions, I was just gonna add, at the state of the company, Gary said there is enough inventory for every agent to hit their goals if they put in the work. So do the work.
Actually, what Gary said was, there's enough business out there for me to hit my goals, which means somebody else isn't gonna hit theirs, not my problem.
He also said that. Yeah, he did. And then what I really loved is he said, don't trust opinions based on assumptions. Like, don't treat other people's assumptions as knowledge, which I see all over social media. I've unfollowed so many of these real estate mastermind groups because it like, I just cannot, I can't with it. Like, know the facts. And you're responsible then for educating your clients because
Please,
that's the kind of.
Please unfollow lab coat agents right now.
Yes,
Really?
and real estate mastermind,
It's
just,
horrible advice in there.
yeah.
Is that real advice? I feel like they're just trying to like get people to comment.
I don't know what it is.
It's clickbait more than
Like-
anything,
but
yeah.
Regardless, please just leave it.
I already did. It's annoying.
Stop it. Bob Newhart, stop it right now, guys. Stop it. We're making it worse. Stop.
Yeah. Any questions from the room for our lovely panelists today?
Who's the guy that you talked about with the generational stuff? Did you write a book? Is there a, like, where can you get more?
There are, yeah, he has like 2 books.
His
wrote
name
the
is
books down.
Jason Dorsey. I'll pull him up.
So Jason Bocci does that. One of the things he was talking about that I didn't know, who are our like Gen Zers in the room? Okay, we got two. So I need validation on this.
He's done any validation.
So he says that,
No.
he says that when talking to Gen Z and actually even some of the millennials, eye contact is a sign of aggression. For Gen Z, and so he says. And so what he says is like, have an iPad and have your iPad open and talk through the iPad and they're looking at the iPad and
Well,
you're looking at the iPad.
if you keep Coco Melon up while we're doing it.
Is it perfect?
But
It's not aggression, I just get intimidated.
Yeah, is that why you don't play it?
I'm aggressive.
Yeah, he said if you do this and you ask, if you have them focused on the iPad, you can ask them any question and they will give you like the honest answer. Like you can ask, what's your social security? Like,
It's so good to know. I had to borrow my son's iPad. I was gonna start with these.
The reason why Gen Zers are so much more comfortable is because they've been taught to speak through a screen.
Right.
So what he fed off of that was also, think about our kids. When my kids answer my phone, they do this.
FaceTime.
And like, they don't, when it's not FaceTime, they do not understand to go like that. When I'm talking, they go, put it up to your ear, they're like, "Why?" They don't understand that. And so then he tied that to today's or next year's first time home buyers are not gonna know another market. That's going to be what they know. Buyers entering even a couple months from now, like this is how it is, this is the process. So it's just okay, yeah.
So another book, remember I told you about diversified generation, it's a must read, I've been talking about it for a year and a half, and I met the author a couple months ago. And same thing on the same lines, the builders, boomers, XYZs, and how each one's shaped and how we communicate. But the interesting thing we talk about is, when we write our thank you notes, we step back and go, who are we writing this to? Because instead of cursive, they won't be able to read it. And now I'm printing my envelopes because I'm not sure that the mailman's reading it, because we're getting things back. Going, we know
We know they live there. Why is this coming
So
back?
we're now printing all our
It's the
envelopes.
one with the red circle, second row, fourth bench.
The diversified generation, yeah.
You kind of.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you're part of the last.
Yeah.
But when we write our thank you notes, we look at which generations and we use their.
No, it's
And if
real.
they're boomers, we write them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they don't know how to write cursive.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to read it.
They don't know how to address an audience.
Hires that like turned to help us and they were all wrong. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think I had to show you that.
This is why, like, I have fun. I'm like, older.
Yeah, I think you made it. You're gonna wheel back.
Any other questions for the room?
Go ahead. I think Jason Dorsey spoke at the Global Leadership Summit a couple of years ago.
I think you're right.
And he also talked about millennials and how how millennials, the generation is splitting into two groups of millennials.
Yes.
How one is the younger millennials.
The younger millennials and the older
And
millennials.
the millennials that are gonna live at home until they're 40.
Right.
And then the other groups of millennials that are like the uber responsible.
Right
uber-
here.
They're
Right here.
responsible.
He said entitled versus not entitled.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, and he also said that the ones that are giving millennials the worst, like, reputation are millennials. Because of the split that we have, some are in delayed adulthood, which is what you're talking about, that's what we call it, delayed adulthood, and then others are like extremely responsible, like, this is what was asked, this is what was, and you go do, and you do it, and the ones that are like that, I fall into that, I'm looking at the younger millennials, like, what are you doing? Like, get your life together, like, but we're talking about each other, like, it's not even the other generations, they say the person that's giving the worst reputation of millennials are millennials. Because of our split that we have going on right now. So you've got your delayed adulthood and then the extremely responsible ones.
I have both.
Well, then, you know, are they talking about each
I
other?
have a 26, a 21, and a 16.
Are they talking about each other? 'Cause
Yeah,
they might,
yeah,
okay.
they're all very different, very, very different, and the
Yeah.
two millennials are extreme from one another. One is like, could you please just get your stuff together, and the other one is on it, and always, I call him my old man, because
Yeah.
he's always on it.
No, it's
So-
true.
It is.
So one of the biggest objections when I ask folks, come to family reunion, come to mega camp, and the one thing that they'll say is, I don't want to pay the money. They don't want to pay for the ticket, the flight, the hotel, the meals while you're there, whatever entertainment you decide to pay for in the moment. Just in a row, would you say, after coming back from CEO Summit, mega camp, the conversations that you've had inside the convention and out, do you feel like you're gonna get a return on your investment?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's worth it. If nothing else, it's worth it because you're with like-minded people. Like, and that in of itself is powerful because it provides the opportunity to really grow and shine. And if you plan it now, you don't have to worry about next year because we know the dates already.
Yeah.
In the place.
Family reunion is in February in Las Vegas.
I don't think I can do that.
Mega camp,
People.
do you know, mega camp will be in San Antonio.
San Antonio.
I wanna go, I mean, I love Vegas, when I'm at, I don't wanna go because it's too many people.
So I don't know if I has
The rebuttal for the.
But I might go.
but that's, you got two to choose from. You got two to choose from.
But the only question is, if you're not gonna go to family reunion or to mega camp to get the energy that
We have.
they're coming back with, what are you doing to get there?
Right.
Like,
I wanna.
and the answer for too many people is nothing, and I know you're not a nothing, so, I can say that to you, but
Too bold.
No, I'm going, I'm.
Yeah, but
it's a very
It's
different thing.
awesome.
When is the San Antonio?
It'll be in August.
It's like the 11th.
I want to say it's like August 11th to, yeah, then I want to say it's
The
11th.
11th to the 13th.
To the 13th.
That's mega key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's when it's in San Antonio.
That's the one.
And that one you can handle, it's only like 6,000 something with realtors compared to going to Las Vegas. There you go.
That one.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, that's the only one. The biggest one.
Yeah, I think to what Matt said, like coming, like there's no price that I can put on the energy that we've all come back with.
Right.
Like even as team leader, there's not a lot at mega camp for leadership per se, other than all the knowledge that we do get to bring back to all of you and share with all of you. But there's something about when you're in that room with 10,000 people getting fed this incredible information and then you come back. I can tell you it's exactly what I need to finish third quarter and then head into fourth, because I think for all of us, we can agree, like that's the toughest quarter. Not only for business, but we just have a lot happening, right? All the holidays are happening, all the family things are happening, kids are back in school. It can feel like a lot, and I needed that gasoline in my tank to be able to get to the finish line for 2024.
I think you just need to step out of the weeds for a couple of days and yet still be in real estate mindset. So it's not vacation mindset. You're still thinking real estate, but you're not at a transactional level. You're looking at the business and from angles that most of the year you don't get a chance.
100%. Without having to, the one thing that we all mentioned was it was great to be able to unpack what we learned for the day.
Yeah.
Without this nagging of like, oh, I gotta get home to the kids. I gotta get home to put food on the table. Like there is something about knowing that you can just be present where you are and talk about what you learned at a high level.
And being able to spend time with agents for time that we wouldn't usually get with that.
I really appreciated that.
I appreciate that.
Me too. Yeah. All right, well, that's all I have.
Oh, kidding.
I'm so sorry.
I was just gonna say, I look at conventions as like an investment in your future self. You're not gonna utilize everything right away, but it's more investment in the future. Cause you will get to a point where you're like, oh, I remember when they said that, or.
Yeah, exactly. We will make sure mega camp notes will be in the need to know. Make sure you're following those because also Scott has an incredible resource with all these form changes where you can easily find everything in one clickable spreadsheet. That will be in the need to know. Go ahead, get some grub, fuel up, and then come back in here for team meeting. Thank you so much.
What's up? What's up? Hey, man, how you doing?